Hello, I'm Eric Vargas. I'm gonna talk about the Amicus Curiae from the Haaland and Brackeen trial. Uh, so, for the supporting arguments, some of the biggest supporters came from the U.S. Department of Justice, the National Congress of American Indians, and then the American Bar Association. Um, One of the biggest arguments was tribal sovereignty and federal authority. Um, A lot of the tribal governments and native organizations contend that by acknowledging tribes as a distinct political entities with the authority to decide how best to raise their children, the ICWA preserves tribal sovereignty. They argue that Indian commerce and treaty clauses of the Constitution provide Congress the authority to regulate issues pertaining to Native American tribes, which includes ICWA. Historical injustices was another argument. The ICWA was established to address the historical abuse of Native children who were frequently separated from families and cultures, often with the goal of assimilation. Supporters argue that the ICWA aims to prevent such acts from happening again by emphasizing the placement of children within the Native communities. The third argument was cultural preservation and best interests of children. Proponents believe that ICWA is intended with Native children's best interests in mind. Components They emphasize that the cultural preservation and connection to one's background are critical components of a child's emotional and social well-being. Maintaining children's ties to their tribes is made possible by the ICWA, which is particularly important for Native traditions to survive. Uh, the fourth argument I have is it's not racial classification. Supporters contend that the ICWA does not violate the Equal Protection Clause since it treats people differently based on tribal identity rather than race, instead of discriminating against non-native families. The law is meant to safeguard the rights of tribes and children within the framework of Native American history and sovereignty. So some of the opposing arguments came from the Goldwater Institute, Pacific Legal Foundation, and a number of state attorney generals. The first argument they had was that equal protection and racial discrimination. They believe that um, some civil rights organizations and state governments claim that the ICWA discriminates based on race by giving precedence to Native American families for the adoption of Native children, since the legislation treats children differently based just on their race rather than their unique needs. They argue that this violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. State sovereignty was the second argument. Several states involved in the case argued that the ICWA violates state sovereignty by placing federal demands on state-run child welfare programs. According to these states, the states should make decisions about children welfare since they are in a better position to evaluate the requirements of specific families and children. The third argument was the 10th Amendment concerns. ICWA's opponents contend that it is unconstitutional under the 10th Amendment, which gives states authority over matters not specifically delegated to the federal government. They contend that the ICWA burdens state systems with federal regulations, especially when it comes to issues like child placement that are customarily subject to state law. And the fourth argument was that best interests of children and non-native families. According to the critics, ICWA's rigid preference for native placements can occasionally work against the best interests of children by positioning or prohibiting adoption in non-native households that might offer more stability or better care. According to some laws, placement preference may put non-native families who want to adopt or foster native children through needless obstacles.